Hi everyone, this is Joanna from CG Vinyl Studio. Thanks for joining me for this quick video. Today I wanted to share with you the correct way to handle your inkjet printable substrates. Proper handling procedures are required in order to keep your substrates pristine and free from fingerprints and other environmental contamination. This should help lead you to perfect prints virtually every time. Without these best practices, you may find yourself wasting time, ink, and a lot of expensive material. So I wanted to give you an overview of the entire process. In front of me you'll see bullet points for best practices for producing professional inkjet printed graphics. First, you should store your vinyl flat and in a humidity-free and climate-controlled environment. The reason you'd like to store it flat is because you want to protect your printer from head collisions. If you insert this sort of material and maybe the edge is bent or you have curling happening on your material, your printer may not be able to handle it like it would a piece of computer paper, which is much thinner and lighter than these professional materials. It's important to protect your printer from head collisions like this, and if you have ordered from me before, you'll know that I ship my vinyl flat and in a cardboard sleeve. And the cardboard sleeve is great for storing your vinyl before you use it. If you have a plastic container, I have a bunch of 12 by 12 plastic containers. I got them from Michael's. They're typically, I think, 3 for $10, sometimes on sale. Those I really like to use to keep any moisture and dust, etc., from contaminating my vinyl. I live in Central Florida, so it's very hot here. I would not keep my vinyl anywhere but in my house because it's climate controlled. I wouldn't put it in the garage or anything like that. You want to keep your vinyl as pristine as possible. Second, you should handle your vinyl with appropriate lint-free and chemical-free gloves. Instead of using your hands, I would certainly wear gloves when handling it. I'll go into detail about these gloves in a moment. Third, before printing on it, you should clean your vinyl from environmental contamination with compressed air. You can buy small compressors for not very much money from Harbor Freight, Home Depot, and Lowe's. This might seem like an unnecessary step or maybe a larger investment than you were thinking when you got into this sort of industry, but it is absolutely critical to keep your environment and your substrates as clean as possible before printing on them. Otherwise, you will end up with a lot of wasted material because you may get pieces of dust or other contaminants in your vinyl, sometimes before you print, sometimes after you print, but either way, you'll find yourself starting over and over again when this happens. So I recommend getting compressed air, and also not just cleaning your vinyl, but also cleaning the surrounding areas. Clean the printer itself with the compressed air, clean any overhead lights or lamps that you may have hanging over where you are producing your graphics with the compressed air. Even the walls behind your printer, keep the floors clean because you want to have as close to a clean room environment as possible before printing. Next, you should check and confirm your printer settings. If you're not sure what they should be, I would certainly visit your owner's manual or even call the manufacturer of your printer. We could have a whole separate video on printers and printer quality and printer cartridges and types of ink, but for the purposes of this video, I will say before you print, make sure your settings are correct. And then print your artwork. After that, you'll want to wait a few minutes, at least 5 to 10 minutes, for your ink to dry. But don't wait much longer than that because, again, you don't want any contaminants like dust, etc., getting into your ink and ruining your artwork. Then, just to be sure that your vinyl is clean, I would take your compressed air and put it on a very low setting, 20 to 30 psi, and hit your vinyl again with that. You should look closely at it under very good natural lighting. I use an OttLight lamp to do this. Those are mimicking natural lighting, and they make it very easy to see if you have any sort of dust or debris in your prints. And then lastly, after this short waiting period, you should immediately use a cold roll laminator to apply your laminate. And I probably will be having other videos related to this subject alone as well, because that's probably what I get the most questions about is, what is laminate? How do I use it? How do I apply it? So I'd like to share that information with you as well. But going back to this second bullet point here, handle with appropriate lint-free and chemical-free gloves. That's why we're here today. I wanted to show you these gloves and what you should look for and how you should handle your material. So here I've got a couple pieces of my material. This one is glossy inkjet printable vinyl. You can see how reflective it is. This one is clear inkjet printable vinyl. It's also very glossy. And this one is matte inkjet printable vinyl. These are all available in my eBay store, which I will link below. And the commonality between all of these materials is that they have an inkjet coating on them. This is what allows your ink to adhere to the substrate. Otherwise it would just disperse and run right off and bleed off of the page. So in order to get the most consistent, superior prints every time, you need to protect this coating from your fingerprints and any other abrasion or contamination. And the best practice for doing that is, like mentioned, using gloves. So these are the gloves that I am selling in my eBay store, which I'll also link below. These, as you can see, the material is finely woven, sort of shiny, glossy type material. This is 100% nylon, which means it's 100% lint-free. I'll put them on for you so you can see how they fit. I believe these are a size medium. I'll carry a couple different sizes in my store. They are somewhat fitted. You want them to be fitted enough that you can still work with the materials that you have. Now, they are also fingerprint sensitive, which means that I can still feel what I'm doing. Unlike some thicker, like cotton material gloves, you can't really, you're not dexterous when you're wearing them. So those I would not recommend. And also any kind of cotton or microfiber in general is going to leave contamination, dust, debris on your materials. They are not lint-free. So I definitely recommend using these types of lint-free nylon gloves. Of course, these are not the only gloves in existence that would work for this type of application. By the way, you can also use these with photo papers and with actual photos. If you've got old photos or negatives that you want to handle, I would use gloves like this so that you don't contaminate anything. But when you're looking for gloves, certainly, as mentioned, avoid anything that might leave lint or might leave also chemical type residues. And by that I mean, if you think about latex or nitrile gloves, those are not always chemical free. And I know that because I had a client who contacted me through eBay. He had purchased my glossy material and he sent me a message saying, I think there's something wrong with your vinyl. When I print out to the very edges, he was printing right out to the very edge of the material, I'm having some inconsistent printing happening. My print or my ink doesn't seem to be adhering to these areas of the vinyl. And I said, well, okay, why don't you send me some photos so I can maybe help you figure out what's going on? So he sent me some photos, and luckily they were on such an angle that I was able to clearly see along all the edges of his vinyl that he was leaving fingerprints. And so I said, I think maybe it's your handling that is causing you a headache. How are you handling the vinyl? Are you doing it with bare hands or some type of glove? And he said, oh no, I know that I should not be touching the vinyl, especially glossy vinyl, so I'm using nitrile gloves. And I said, okay, that's probably where your execution of your idea is going wrong. He knew not to touch the vinyl, which is great, but he was using nitrile gloves, which can leave a residue, almost like a powdery residue or almost like a greasy or oily residue on your substrate. When that happens, you're not going to be able to print correctly on them. So once we straightened that out, he had no problem printing on the substrate. So the way I would use these is to put both of your gloves on, and when you're handling your materials, to handle them right from the edges or almost hold them like underneath like this, and touch them as little as possible. Even though you're now protecting the substrate from your fingerprints, you still want to touch the inkjet coating as little as possible in order to give you that consistent, superior result that you're looking for. So I think this concludes the idea of what I meant to tell you all today. Again, let's look back at my bullet points for best practices here. We talked about storing the vinyl flat and in a climate-controlled environment. We talked about the types of gloves to use. We talked about cleaning your vinyl and your environment, checking your printer settings, then printing, waiting for a few minutes for the ink to dry, cleaning your vinyl again, and then laminating. So following these best practices should give you the best possible result. These best practices are an accumulation of knowledge from our combined decades of experience in this industry. Again, I will link the listing to these gloves below. I'll be selling them bundled with my materials because I believe using them in conjunction, the gloves with my substrates, will give you the best possible professional and consistent result. Please feel free to comment below or send me eBay messages or emails regarding any questions you may have or requests for future videos. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a great day.